back. The National Institute for Communicable Diseases is warning of a huge surge in flu cases, with clusters detected in schools and offices, workplaces. There is now a push for people to take the flu vaccine to better protect their immune systems. Take a listen.
Going to take the vaccine is always a good call, whether you get a cough, and I'm not quite sure what they mean by it, because it could be the common cold, it could be some kind of allergy that's in their environment at this time of the year. And if they are unsure, it is always wiser to consult a health center or a medical trained person. But I would still encourage them, cough or not, to get vaccinated.
Let's stay with the story. Part of the most vulnerable, severely affected by this flu are children, part of the sort of population that will be more severely impacted. Children, of course, it's also people with underlying diseases. But let's unpack the aspect of children this morning. We're joined by Professor Mignon, who is from the South African Paediatric Association. Prophet, great to see you. Thanks very much for coming on. A lot of the advisories being given is very reminiscent of the kind of advice we received under COVID-19, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I think it also heralds the fact that winter has arrived, and NICD monitors all the infections that we get at this time of the year. And we've seen an upsurge in influenza A and influenza B. So often when people call it a cold, it may in fact be what we know as flu. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it throughout the country. And I think since COVID, people have now relaxed all those measures we put in place that would be helpful in winter. So no one's wearing masks. People, when they become sick, instead of staying at home or not being in public, they're going out there, not washing their hands, not protecting themselves when they cough or sneeze. And I think what's happened in the last 3 or 4 years is because of COVID, people did not go out and about as much. And now everything has been relaxed. Everybody is out. Everyone's back at school. And so we're saying the common sort of, if you want to call it, etiquette around being sick and not spreading your germs to other people around you, people have forgotten about that. And so we're just saying, please go back to being careful about that. I think this is not room for panic. It's the usual influenza that we see. We've been watching it happen from around April. And most people will just get flu-like symptoms, but there are people who are vulnerable. And so you've mentioned children, specifically the very young, children under the age of 2. We also mentioned older people, pregnant moms, and anybody who has an underlying medical problem already. So those kids with severe asthma, severe diabetes, kidney or heart conditions, those who've been ex-premature babies. We know that there are vaccines available for influenza. Ideally, you should start taking them before the winter season, so April or May, but it's never too late to get a vaccine if you are a vulnerable person. If you're not a vulnerable person, we're saying seek help early, especially if you've got a young person suffering from it, and stay at home. Don't go out there and spread it to the community, because we know that influenza actually spreads much more quickly than COVID did. So it's going back to getting all those infections that we saw pre-COVID, but using tricks that we picked up during COVID to protect each other and protect ourselves as well.
Yeah. You're right. We're seeing a lot of people with sniffles, coughs, out and about in shopping malls, out in public. I wonder what that shift is due to, Prof. When we were so careful under COVID-19 and we followed that kind of advice, stay home if you are sick, wear a mask, sneeze and cough into your elbow. We've forgotten very, very quickly.
I think there's a bit of a rebellion against it. I'm not going to wear a mask again. Don't make me do it. And we're saying we're not making people do it. We're just saying be careful. If you are vulnerable, possibly wear a mask. If you're sick, definitely don't go out there and share it with others. As I said, it's not room for major panic. There are good vaccines available, and every year the flu vaccine is adapted for what is presumed to be that viral strain. And again, with COVID, not only were people anti-masks, but people became anti-vaccine as well. We know that vaccines are good. I know there was all kinds of social media anxiety around vaccines, but on the whole, vaccines over the years has prevented all kinds of infections that we now don't see anymore, smallpox, diphtheria. We know that all children get vaccinated routinely, and we're not saying everybody should be vaccinated for flu, but if you are in that vulnerable population, this is something that can protect you and can help you from developing a severe flu-like illness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you or your child is ill, seek help early. That's what health professionals are there for. And we're warning the health professionals round about this time, if somebody does come to you with sniffles or a cough or a cold, do remember that influenza A and B are very much around, and I think that's the role of NICD. Not to cause panic, but just to say flu is now upon us, winter is upon us, so just be careful. And if you are sick, carry a handkerchief or preferably a tissue that you can discard, clean your surfaces, and just stay at home and don't share the bugs. Sharing is not caring in this situation. But
disinfect, wash your hands constantly. Yeah,
we've learned all those tricks before, and it doesn't go away. So use the same principles that we learned from COVID. Don't panic about it, but definitely apply that to anybody who's sick, and rather stay at home for a day or two.
Yeah. So that was my next question. You were saying, if you are sick, do seek medical attention. At what stage do you think that we should do that, Prof? Because it's that time of year as well. It's a bit of change of season in the air. People are a bit more sniffly, sneezing a bit of a cough as well. At what stage, do I think this could actually be the flu?
So as I said, I think if you're a young child under 2, or if you have a child who has a medical condition already, you really need to be extra cautious. But any child who's running a high fever, who's not managing to tolerate both feeding as well as managing to drink liquids, someone who's coughing, someone whose breathing is fast, and I think I always trust parents. I always say to my students, listen to the parents. I think if parents are worried, rather seek medical attention early rather than sit and worry about it.
Yeah.
So I think as adults, we can afford to sit on our own infections a little bit longer. But for younger children, if you're worried, rather go and seek help rather than sit and be worried at home. And if you do have an infection and you do need to go to work, because some people do need to do so, we're now all used to wearing masks. So we would recommend somebody wearing a mask if they have to be out and about.
Yeah, some great advice there. And then, Prof, if I'm already displaying symptoms of the flu, can I still get the vaccine?
Ideally, if you're running a high fever and you're very unwell, we recommend that you wait a couple of days before you have the vaccine. But the feeling is that it's never too late to get the vaccine, specifically if you're going into the winter season. But if you're acutely unwell, as with any vaccine, we'd normally say hold off a few days.
Professor Mignon McCulloch, let me thank you for your time this morning. Some great advice there, as we are now well and truly into the flu season of this year. The Prof is from the South African Paediatric Association. And yeah, that's the advice. If you have children under the age of 2, if there are underlying conditions there, perhaps best to see a doctor if you are displaying any of those symptoms.